Drukhari strike swiftly and mercilessly. With each new depravity enacted, they feed their withered souls, growing stronger from the pain they inflict upon their enemies. Yet the hunger within them can never be completely sated. Evil incarnate. Fiercely intelligent, piratical raiders who feed upon anguish to stave off the slow death of their souls. The Drukhari epitomize everything wanton and cruel about the ancient Eldari race from which they are descended. Their boundless potential is put to every terrible purpose they can imagine, and because their lives span millennia, they have all the time they need to perfect their Stygian arts. The Drukhari turned their backs upon the material dimension long ago, and now only emerge from their twilight realm to revel in the torments of the lesser races. The warrior cabals strike swiftly and without warning, from portals opened within the webway only to disappear like ghosts when enemy resistance becomes too severe. They launch their piratical raids from above, whole armies screaming into the midst of the foe, firing from the decks of Baroque craft, before leaping down to experience the slaughter firsthand. Sprays of arterial blood and spasming corpses mark their passage, the laughter of these merciless warriors the last thing their victims hear. To the sadistic Drukhari, the sweet fruit of horror is as pleasing as the caress of a razored blade across soft flesh. They relish breaking the bodies of their captives, but prize even more highly the process of crushing their spirits. For nothing is more gratifying to the denizens of the Dark City than securing utter dominion over those who have resisted them. They drink in every nuance of woe until their captives gibber and plead for death, a mercy the Drukhari are famously slow to grant. When I look upon the lesser races, I am filled with disgust. Left to their own devices, they lead lives that are pitifully brief and completely devoid of meaning. How many of their generations have passed in my lifetime? The answer is beneath my attention. Yet with the correct application of my art, each of those wretched beings can be made to endure an eternity of suffering. And it is through their screams that they show me their value. Urian Rakarth, master homunculus of the prophets of flesh. The warriors of the Drukhari are tall and lithe without exception. Their alabaster skin is almost corpse-like in its pallor, for there is no true sunlight within their shadowy realm. Their athletic physiques are lined with whipcord muscle, honed and enhanced until they are superior even to those of their craft world cousins, the Asuriani. For the warriors of the Cormorag prize martial prowess most highly. They stride through the fires of battle with the surety of those who have lived for millennia. Goodness, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my throat right now. And they rarely sully their tongues with the grunting languages of the inferior races, using translator technology on those occasions when communication is unavoidable. But their magnificence is only skin-deep. Viewed in the witch sight, Drukhari are repugnant monsters, eternally thirsting for the anguish of others in order to fill the aching void at their core. The Drukhari are masters of fighting with every weapon at their disposal. Survival amongst their society demands nothing less. Little distinction is drawn between the sexes, for an individual's skill and cunning is far more important than traits such as height or gender. Their senses are keen to the point of paranoia, their shadowed eyes and tapered ears alert to the slightest disturbance. In the dark city in which they make their lair, the incautious do not survive for long. While countless generations of conflict have ensured the Drukhari's bodies are even more suited to physical combat than other elements of the Eldari race, the innate psychic abilities possessed by their forebears have, by necessity, been allowed to atrophy. To channel the energies of the warp within the dark city would be to invite disaster, for doing so could draw the gaze of the chaos god Slanesh, the one the Eldari fearfully call She Who Thirsts. As such, the use of psychic powers is one of the few things forbidden in Gamora. Oh, I get it. Gamora. Cute. The weaponry manufactured within the Dark City is just as advanced as that which is... Okay, I got tripped up because I wasn't expecting that. The weaponry manufactured within the Dark City is just as advanced as that which is psychically grown upon the craft worlds. In matters of war, the Drukhari are artisans supreme. Their technology refined to such a point that it may as well be magical. Their endless imagination and skill have led them down a sinister path indeed. Their favorite tools of war include splinter weapons that can set every nerve aflame with pain, darklight beams, whips that bleed acidic ichor, and eldritch soul traps. The Drukhari are so confident in their own abilities that their lightweight bodysuits incorporate bladed plates, not only for protection, but also to give them yet another weapon to use upon their prey. Collectively, the warriors of Gamora know all the ways there are to kill the galaxy's myriad creatures, and delight in perfecting as many as they can. The Labyrinth's dimension. For the Imperium of Mankind, travel between distant stars is made possible by passing through the warp, the twisted dimension of the Chaos Gods. To do so is to invite peril, for the predatory servants of the ruinous powers are able to scent the emotional trace of interlopers, devouring the souls of those they find. For the Drukhari, as with all members of their race, this danger is even greater, for where the soul of a human is but a dim flicker in the warp, that of an Eldar is a blazing beacon. To enter the Immaterium is to draw the attention of She Who Thirsts, who was created millennia ago by the unfathomable decadence of the Drukhari's ancestors. But there are other ways to traverse the stars, such as through the interstitial nether realm known as the Webway. Sometimes called the Labyrinth Dimension, the Webway is a construct of shimmering arterial pathways that spans both real space and the Immaterium. It is defined by the fact that it sits between the material realm and the roiling tides of the warp, comparable to the surface of a mirror or the fabric of a veil cast over something foul. The ancient Eldari discovered that it was possible to exist within that silvered surface, to move between the threads of that veil. It is here that the Drukhari have made their home, and it is by using the innumerable hidden portals that connect the Webway and real space that the raiding parties of Gamora are able to terrorize the galaxy. Since the fall, the great tragedy of the Eldari race, the Webway has been a realm both shattered and dangerous, its splintered reaches infested by strange beings from different realities. Yet this is the perfect breeding ground for the warriors of the Drukhari. Gamora. In the depths of the Webway lies Gamora, named by many in fearful whispers as the Dark City. Gamora is to the greatest megalopolises of real space as a soaring mountain is to a mound of termites. Its dimensions would be considered impossible if they could be read by conventional means, its population greater than that of whole star systems. Although called a city, Gamora is more akin to a vast collection of satellite realms, linked by myriad portals and hidden pathways. Its far-flung nodes spread throughout the arteries of the Webway, like a malevolent virus. While inside that labyrinth dimension, the gap between each sub-realm can be crossed with a single step. Gamora's clustered concentrations are in reality scattered across the galaxy, in some cases thousands of light years apart. Gamora appears within the Webway as a composite entity of impossible scale, a shimmering, contradictory realm that plucks at the sanity of those who approach it. Thousands of ships dock each day within its outflung spines, for the Drukhari are far more numerous than even their craft-world kin suspect. It is not only the society of the Drukhari that festers within this terrible realm. Gamora plays host to many of the galaxy's most disreputable and villainous individuals, including alien mercenaries, bounty hunters, corsairs, and renegades, all risking their souls in the hope of claiming the riches of the Dark City. Drukhari raids are launched with such speed and voraciousness that many defenders are slain before they even know they are under attack. Without question, those who are ignorant of the fiends that have come for them are the most fortunate. Lord of Darkness. The occupants of the Dark City are sadistic murderers all, abjectly self-serving and incapable of compassion. Violent civil skirmishes are omnipresent, yet descent into complete anarchy is prevented by the ruthless hand of the supreme overlord of Gamora, Asdrubal Vecht, a master strategist and tactician. Vecht's mind is as sharp as the blades he puts to the throats of his detractors. It is by his cunning that the warring cabals are kept in balance, unable to devour each other completely, yet still spurred to brutal competition with one another as they vie for the Supreme Overlord's favor. In this way, the political statuses of these bitter rivals are in constant flux, the ebbing and flowing of their power driven ever by Vecht. Those killers who are able to thrive in this environment whilst remaining in Vecht's graces are given permission to put their practiced brutality to use during real space raids. Dark Origins. 10,000 years ago, amid the apocalyptic screams of a newborn god, the mighty Eldari Empire fell to ruin. Yet the architects of this catastrophe were spared the worst of its wrath, as they were hidden deep within the bounds of the webway. They lurk there still, a race of unrepentant monsters, damned to suffer an eternal thirst for the pain of others. The ancient empire of the Eldari was the greatest civilization since that of the Old Ones. The various cultures that exist in the 41st millennium mere reflections of its glory. Yet the Eldari fell from grace in the most profound of ways. The Skrins, I don't know that word, of those who now call themselves the Drukhari can be found hidden amidst the atrocity and mayhem of that terrible time. The ancient Eldari had perfected their sciences to such an extent that they could travel vast distances in a heartbeat, reforge planets to their liking, and quench stars at a whim. With the galaxy prostrate at their feet and arduous labor but a distant memory, the Eldari were gradually overcome by an arrogant sense of entitlement. Free to indulge their every curiosity, they spent ever more time engaged in esoteric pursuits, desperate to escape the ennui that set over the course of their centuries-long lives. The Eldari psyche is a thing of extremes and intense complexity. It can experience zeniths of bliss and nadirs of horror far more keenly than that of other races. It is just as capable of falling into corruption as it is of transcending to the sublime. With so much power at their beck and call, the core of the Eldari realm, once a masterpiece of civilization, became centered around self-gratification and the pursuit of individual fulfillment. Slowly, the proud empire began to rot from within. Amongst the pleasure-seekers and the interminably curious were those whose pursuit of excess became increasingly extreme. These included a great proportion of the aristocracy of ancient Eldari society, those with the wealth and the time to truly explore every aspect of decadence. One by one, the leaders of the cults of excess that were growing within Eldari society became obsessed with their own power. They relocated into the labyrinth dimension known as the Webway, taking over hidden ports and setting up strongholds at key nodal points within to continue their debased pursuits. Almost invariably, these realms were linked via portals to the sprawling and exhilaratingly lawless city of Gamora. Okay, so something's wrong with the way that this document has been processed, because that SCRIN word has appeared again, unless that is a word. I'll read it as it is. Gamora was scrinily the greatest of the webway port cities, impossibly vast and able to transport a fleet to any of the most vital planets of the Eldari Empire by virtue of its many portals. Because of the access it granted to the far-flung corners of real space, this mighty metropolis was reckoned to be the most important location in the entire webway. It was too valuable to the Eldari as a whole to belong to any single aspect of their empire, so it existed outside the jurisdiction of the great Eldari councils of that time. Precisely because of its autonomy, the city port quickly became a magnet for those that wished their deeds to remain hidden from prying eyes. The realm of Gamora expanded unstoppably as wealth flowed across its borders. It spread outwards into the void, consuming other webway port cities, private estates, and sub-realms with each new expansion. Gamora grew ever larger and more impressive as it fed on their plundered resources. Unseen, the dilettante lords who ruled Gamora's spires and dens of vice grew in status alongside their adoptive city, initiating more and more of the Eldari into their shadowy creeds. The Eldari are exceptionally psychically gifted as a race, and as they wallowed ever deeper into corruption, echoes of both agony and ecstasy began to ripple through time and space. In the parallel dimensions of the warp, the reflections of these intense experiences began to coalesce, for the shifting tides of the Empyrean can take form around raw emotions, feeding on them and growing strong, even sentient. The constant stream of indulgence and depravity pouring from the Eldari Empire was as unstoppable as a tide. It nourished and empowered that which crystallized at its center, a nascent god of excess, contented first simply to wait and to grow. The fall of the Eldari. As the Eldari Empire began its descent into madness, there were some who foresaw disaster and fled to safety. The first of these were the Exodites, those who perceived their peril clearest of all. They chose to establish a network of colonies far away from the blighted heart of the Empire, exiling themselves so that they might survive. Many of them exist there still, their cultures living in a symbiotic relationship with the world spirits of their planets. Those who escaped later were the forefathers of the Asuriani. As their parent society became ever more depraved, they recoiled in horror from what their once noble kin had become. Realizing that they stood upon the brink, they turned their considerable resources to the construction of immense craft worlds, graceful space cities the size of small moons. The Eldari of the craft worlds fled into the void, desperate to escape from the punishment that must surely fall upon their race. Some would even succeed. Those left behind jeered at the craven flight and narrow minds of their departed cousins. Yet the more cunning amongst them watched and wondered, shoring up the defenses of their occluded webway strongholds, even as they continued their hedonistic pursuits. As depravity riddled every aspect of Eldari society, the cults of excess sought ever more violent thrills. Before long, the streets of the Empire's cities ran with blood. The elegant architecture of their palaces became battlegrounds as the Eldari preyed upon each other, delighting in the cruelest of crimes. Their insanity and tainted passion poured into the warp until it achieved critical mass. With a thunderous metaphysical roar that tore the heart out of the Empire, a new god was born. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince of Excess. Slaanesh's birth screams destroyed countless souls in a psychic shockwave that rolled across the galaxy. Whole star systems fell amid orgies of cannibalism and violence. In that instant, most of the Eldari race was destroyed, consumed by a cataclysm of terror and pain. The epicenter of their real space empire was sucked into the warp, leaving a yawning maelstrom of pure chaos in its place. A place the Imperium would later call the Eye of Terror. Slaanesh gorged upon the despair of the Eldari. Unstoppable in its ascendancy, it consumed the deities of the old Eldari Empire, scattering the few survivors to the corners of the warp. The Eldari civilization was reduced to a broken diaspora, their realm destroyed by the aftershock of Slaanesh's inception. Yet those hidden in the webway remained all but untouched. Great swaths of the labyrinth dimension itself were shattered into ruin, but many of those Eldari who had built personal empires in and around Gamora survived the birth of Slaanesh. The echoes of the new god's arrival had wrought insidious changes within them, changes whose horrific nature would not be fully comprehended until later. But the Gamorite Eldari had escaped destruction. In their supreme arrogance, they did not cease their quest for excess, even for a moment. Repentance and atonement were alien concepts to a people who acknowledged no limits to their power. The Eldari sealed within the webway had not escaped the fall, though this horror would only dawn on them slowly. Rather than having their essence consumed in one great draught, their souls were slowly draining away into the warp, consumed over time by Slaanesh, the entity the Eldari call She Who Thirsts. The Eldari fear Slaanesh above all, for the god was given life by their actions, and now waits hungrily on the other side of the veil to claim each and every one of them. Where the Eldari of the craft worlds learned to deny Slaanesh's hold upon them using the mystical spirit stones and infinity circuits, the Gamorite Eldari became expert at ensuring that lesser beings suffered in their stead. Provided they steeped themselves in the most extreme and decadent acts, the Eldari of the webway found that the curse of Slaanesh could be abated. The agony of others nourished their withered souls and kept them vital and strong, filling their frames with unnatural energies. Assuming they could feed regularly enough, the webway dwellers became physically immune to the passage of time. So it was that the Drukhari were born, sadistic parasites who subsist upon the anguish of others in order to prevent the slow death of their immortal souls. 10,000 years later, in the 41st millennium, Slaanesh's thirst pulls at them still. There truly is no escape. The Drukhari have unwittingly doomed themselves, exchanging a horrific but mercifully swift end for an eternity of ghoulish starvation. To this day, the Drukhari raid the galaxy from the canker that is Gamora, sowing misery and destruction wherever they emerge, and spiriting away countless captives to their lairs for their own horrible ends. They are masters of torture and degradation, for the longer a Drukhari can drag out the punishment of a captive, the greater the nourishment that can be derived from it. A Drukhari who is recently fed upon the torment of others shines with a cold and startling aura, their physical form restored to perfection, even as the spirit within festers. One who is starved of such energies for long enough will become a shadow, desperately hunting for a taste of pain with which to stave off the gnawing pangs at the depths of their soul. And there is where we are going to stop the video for today. These guys are actually quite interesting. They're sort of a combination of dark elves and vampire counts. Yeah, that's pretty fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.